What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? We are getting caffeinated this morning, hopefully responsibly. We've got an amazing guest here, all the way from Denmark, it is, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
From Denmark, who has been doing a lot of work on human rights and the environmental issues with the coffee industry. So, Etelle, can you please just let us know who you are, what you're doing, kind of the work that you've been focusing on here?
Yeah, it's so great to be here on your show. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Etelle Higonnet, and I'm the founder and director of Coffee Watch. And I guess the best way to explain what that is, it's like as if Greenpeace and Amnesty International got together and had a baby, and that baby just wanted to work on coffee. And I used to work at Greenpeace and Amnesty, so I've been a human rights and environmental activist for pretty much my whole life.
That's incredible. How did you get into doing environmental activism, get into Greenpeace, and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started out actually just as a human rights lawyer, and as a human rights activist and then lawyer. So I worked at this organization in Guatemala right after the peace accords were signed that was helping to bring back refugees and internally displaced people from the genocide in Guatemala. Um, and it just blew my mind that there had been all these horrible human rights violations so close to the US and kind of financed, I guess, also by the American taxpayers, unfortunately. And
We do that a
also,
lot. It's
yeah,
Genocide.
I
it's
know.
our
And
it's our
also, like,
hobby, our
it's our
pastime.
hobby. Yeah, the other part of
Funding
that, unfortunately,
genocide,
yeah.
destabilizing entire countries. It's
Oh, so we did
what we're
that.
good at.
Check,
Yeah, yeah,
check.
yeah.
Yep,
Hmm.
yep, yeah. The
Yeah.
U.S. had like helped overthrow a leftist regime and installed like a right wing dictatorship in Guatemala
Yep.
that carried out
Classic.
atrocities. So
Classic United
that's just
States. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Gotta go on brand, on brand. So
Yep.
no, so sorry, that's dark humor, but to go with your dark bitter coffee truths that we'll unleash later. But yeah, that just set me on a path, and then I worked in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic with people who are stateless. And Haiti also, of course, is sort of like the U.S.'s backyard, and I'm half French, half American, so of course it had been a former French colony, and France had horribly abused Haitians for centuries, so it felt close to home. And then after working in human rights for like 12 years and doing all these investigations into crimes against humanity in war zones and post conflict areas, I worked in places like Iraq and Liberia. My hair started falling out. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I had like lost 5 kilos. And my best friend said, "Okay, you got to work on something more cheerful." So I was like, "Climate change! That's so much more cheerful than atrocities. Let's go work on climate change. Greenpeace, please take me." So yeah, it was crazy. Not very cheerful, but certainly very fulfilling. So that's how I sort of made the leap from human rights to climate work.
That's a very interesting story. I don't know anybody who tones it down by going to climate justice as it's a nice more chill career field. And that's
Well,
I
actually, the
yeah.
mean,
funny
yeah.
thing is that they're so interconnected as the two sides of the same coin,
Mhm.
which I didn't fully realize until I went to Greenpeace. But usually like the same vessels that will rape the ocean and do what we call IUU fishing, pirate fishing, marine protected areas and stuff, they also are the ones that are floating prisons with basically modern slavery. And the same palm oil companies that do deforestation and kill orangutans and burn these huge forests, you could see the smoke from like literally outer space. Those
Mhm.
are also the companies that do like indigenous land grabbing and horrible abuses of their workers with rape and child labor and forced labor. So actually, the environment stuff and the human rights stuff, you cannot separate it. It is totally intertwined, which only I realized when I went to Greenpeace. But yeah.
Well, and I mean, and it goes further than that too, because the places that are going to be the most impacted by climate change are often the poorest places, and that's going to lead to more conflict, more genocide, more fighting over resources, more famine, worse disease spreading, in places like Africa and the global South. And so yeah, there's definitely a human rights component just to the fact that climate change affects the people who are already the most disenfranchised on our planet.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the best estimates of how many climate refugees we'll have by 2050, which we will all be around for. That's not very far away, I hope. At least I hope we'll be around for that. But yeah, it's
Every
coming
day
soon.
I'm hoping a little less, honestly, the way that everything's going.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, the best available science indicates we will have around 1 to 1.2 billion with a B
Wow.
climate refugees. So
I
like
mean, for
the
for
small
perspective,
trickle of
that's
people that freaks
yeah.
us out because they cross the border into France or Spain or America or whatever, like wake up and smell the mass migration, a billion with a
Mhm.
B. That's how many people will be on the move.
Yeah, for context for everybody, that's like an eighth of the global population
It's
right
an
now.
eighth. That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Four
So
times
we
the
should get
American,
ready.
yeah, four
Yeah.
times the U.S.
Yeah.
population. Yeah, when what Donald Trump claims 20 million 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States currently. Even if you isolate just the southern western hemisphere out of that 1.2 billion, maybe that's like a quarter. So that's 200 million, 250 million
Hmm.
people instead of 20. So I mean, the immigration and the issues that we're facing right now are small fry compared to the potential that we're facing at the moment.
We have got to fix this now because if we don't, we will like reap the whirlwind. And I have to say, as a note of hope, I really am a glass half full person, and I 100% believe we can fix a lot of the problems that we're facing today. Renewable energy, electric cars. We can do coffee without deforestation. We can do all of our commodities without deforestation. We have all the tools and the know how and the science and the technology. What we need is to put the will in our hearts to make it happen stat. Otherwise, we're going to be effed, like really effed.
Well, I think too. It's not as much the will. I think all of us on a human level, or I would hope that most of us on a human level. I definitely can't speak for all of us, especially living in this country. But would want that. We want to see a more sustainable economy, a more sustainable environment, a more sustainable transportation system, a more sustainable energy system. We want to make sure we on a human level, I think all of us would want everybody to have a happy, healthy, fulfilling life where they live now. Like nobody wants to flee their country from war or famine or disease or whatever is going on there. And so like yeah, I would love it if we had fewer people immigrating here, but not because I don't want them here. I want them to be, not feel like they have to come here as refugees to survive. And this is where I think that people have that will, but there is maybe we all feel a little helpless about what we can do because big corporations are really the people who are driving this, where they don't want
That's
these things
true.
to change.
That's true. But the funny thing is that with something like coffee, it's a great starter commodity to work on as an individual. So instead of feeling helpless, I would just say, just think of this as like a really big pizza and you break it into little small slices. And, think about coffee. Coffee is extremely sensitive to climate change. So scientists tell us that we're going to lose half of coffee by 2050. And that means a lot of people are going to be migrating from coffee regions, right? Because we have 25 million coffee farmers and 100 million farm workers in coffees. That's 125 million souls. Yeah. Plus, you have to add in their families, right? So they have dependents. Most of them have dependents, at least one or two. So, okay, if we accept that climate chaos is just unstoppable, we're not going to do anything about it, we're not going to fix problems as they arise, then that's a huge number of people that we're just dooming to chaos and migration. But we can choose differently. And actually, so the nice thing about coffee, but I can also talk about palm oil and cocoa, there's so many other commodities that are really similar to coffee. There are only 7 commodities that are destroying global forests today, basically at scale. So if you're worried about forests and a habitable planet, That's bad news because there's 7, but it's good news because it's only 7. And that's what we have to get a handle on. Coffee is one of those 7. It's something you probably drink every day if you're like most Americans. It's something that's probably served in your office or your school, and you can change that. You can buy from the heart. You can change how the institutions that you're part of buy. You can be part of the movement to force those multinational corporations that you talked about to change. They're hypersensitive to consumer pressure. They are so freaked out. You have this amazing, gorgeous power to change them. And what I've seen from Greenpeace work that I did is when activists really got together and there was a big movement, it effing changed the palm oil industry. Deforestation for palm oil went down, 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 down. Forced labor, down. Rape in palm oil, down. Child labor in palm oil, down. Burning fires for palm oil, down. So this teaches us, oh my God, we can win. We can change one of the top, most destructive industries on the planet. And coffee's nice because, if we make it regenerative agroforestry with a living income, it can be respectful of the communities and the farmers and the ecosystems that it's in. And you can totally make the world better with every cup instead of raping the planet and screwing over farmers and forests. So I think it's like a great example of, okay, don't feel helpless, feel empowered and get busy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably should be the focus, especially for Americans right now, because our government is not interested in focusing on any environmental issues. And as activists, there's plenty to worry about here with our immigration activities right now, obviously being a big one. But if you're focused on environmentalism in the United States, you're probably not going to get anywhere unless you focus on some of these issues that are not as specific to our home in that way.
So, I mean, I personally think that the people in the federal government now range between like climate criminals to cuckoo banana pants, la la land, delusional wackadoodles. And there's not a lot of
title that I don't know how you remember off the top of your head.
Yeah, I like it though. Okay. It's a good title. Okay,
I do. I like it. I'll never be able to repeat it, but I like it.
While we have these like dodos and banana loser pants like in charge of our federal policy on climate and human rights, that doesn't mean we can't stop state action. We can totally make the blue states into a green wall. Like, why are the blue states such losers when it comes to the environment? Let's step up our game. Let's make every single blue state an amazing bastion of conservation and forward-looking environmental policy and action. And by the way, most Americans also live in cities, and most cities are pretty blue, even in red states. Cities like Austin. So actually, frankly, it's not just your state level politics, it's your city level politics that you can change. Fate closes the door and it opens a window. And also, I think we forget, not only are we more or less still in some kind of a democracy in the US where you can take action at the state and city level, even when the federal government is run by wankers, still, you can also do corporate campaigns. And those are hugely powerful. And I'm just talking about coffee, but we could talk about cocoa, we could talk about cars, we could talk about apparel, there's all of it.
What are the big 7? Sorry, because people who like one of our commenters said that they don't drink coffee, and obviously I think that this is what are the big 7?
Okay, so it's the 7 deadly sins of forests. The big 4, like the titans of deforestation, are cattle, soy, palm oil, and pulp and paper. Cattle, obviously cows, so eating beef, but also less obviously leather and pet food has cattle in it. Tallow, there's a lot of tallow in things, especially this like weirdo Maha people seem to love beef tallow for some reason. I just don't understand why, but okay, fair enough, they like that. But it's really problematic. Cattle are like by far and away the biggest driver of deforestation, but soy is right after. And soy, actually, like most soy goes to feed animals, mostly chickens and baby piggies. So it's actually not like your soy sauce and your tofu that you should be worried about. It's chickens
I
and
thought
baby
like
piggies.
America produces enough corn and soy to like feed the entire world, but we mainly use it to feed
2 or 3 times over. Mm-hmm.
Right. We use it to feed our livestock.
70% of the grain the United States produces goes to feeding livestock. And I mean, like, I've got right out in the front yard a soybean field. I'm surprised Honestly, that one I didn't know. I'm surprised that soy is such a big
Yeah,
driver of deforestation because we produce so much here in the United States, and at a certain point we absolutely did tons of deforestation for farmland, but that, our agricultural revolution is long in the past at this point, and our
it's
farm fields
raping the
existed.
Amazon. It's raping the Amazon. That's where it's
Sure,
at.
sure.
Yeah. So
Well,
we've got
they
cattle
need
and
to be able to
soy.
feed the beef down there, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, even more chickens and piggies, baby
Okay,
pigs. But yeah,
sure.
so cattle and soy, and then pulp. Pulp and paper. Obviously, it's like packaging and timber. For furniture and houses and Kleenex and toilet paper and all that. It's so sad that we wipe our butts with like ancient forests. Let's not even get into that. But then also, palm oil. It's in 50% of what you leave the supermarket with. And it's in your shampoo, your conditioner, your beautiful lipstick that the two of you are wearing. No, just kidding. But it's in
It's
your cup
glamorous.
of noodles. It's in, yeah, it's glamour. It's in your ice cream, your cup of noodles. It's in your cornflakes. Palm oil is in like 50% of what we consume at the
I didn't know that.
supermarket.
And so the work that you said Greenpeace did on palm oil, I had made some progress, but obviously it's still a huge problem.
So it was a game changer. I think what Greenpeace did is fair to say, and I'm biased because I used to work there, but there's also amazing other organizations that deserve like great kudos. Aman, which is this Indonesian organization, and WALHI, also this Indonesian group, and Rainforest Action Network, even groups like WWF and things did a lot. So basically, it was a huge team effort. But I would say civil society worldwide and in Indonesia really stood up and made an enormous difference. And so deforestation plummeted for palm oil. So it's still in the big four, but it's like a lot less awful than it used to be. And then right after those giant four titans are cocoa, coffee, and rubber. And they're like the smaller ones of the seven deadly sins for forests.
So, out of curiosity, when you chose coffee, if coffee's, on the lower side of the seven deadly sins of deforestation, why did you go with coffee and not cattle or soy or something along those
Oh
lines, or stick
yeah,
with
I
palm
used
oil?
to do nothing but palm oil and cattle and soy work, and also I did some of the first work to try to stop deforestation globally for cocoa and for rubber, because those industries had never had campaigns against them. That's how I think I ended up getting
Hmm.
knighted for that. But yeah, I'm a huge believer in working on those other commodities too. It's just that nobody was working on coffee and deforestation at all, like
Okay.
zero.
No, it makes
So I
total
thought
sense.
someone should do it. We
Absolutely.
should have just like one group. Let's get one group.
Yeah, no, it's a good
I,
start for sure.
But I
I mean,
love
I
the
do
other
feel.
stuff too. Don't worry. I
Mhm.
love it. Yeah.
I do feel like I've heard a lot about unethical coffee production, specifically, like you hear a lot about it, and maybe that's just because it's hipstery and artisanal to get ethically sourced coffee, because coffee shops are a huge thing in the United States, and so maybe that's just why we hear it, and it's just coffee shops patting themselves on the back for buying from something that's slightly more ethical, and that's why we hear about it. But I guess I would have assumed that there was a lot more organizations working on this than
So there are a lot of certifications in coffee. So half of global coffee is certified. And exactly what you were saying, it's so spot on. A lot of coffee
Mhm.
shops that want to be more ethical, they will do stuff like buy certified coffee and then pat themselves on the back. But wake up and smell the
Coffee.
craziness.
Yeah.
There is no certification that guarantees a living income price for coffee farmers or that guarantees a living wage for the farm workers. So it's 25 million farmers and 100 million farm workers. They do not get a living income. And like that is exactly what it sounds like, right? Living income. It's like I can live off of this.
Mhm.
It's not like a dignity
Yeah.
income or a
I
well-being
mean,
income or
living wage is a concept that Americans have yet to fully grasp, it seems, on the
Yeah.
mainstream. So I can understand why there hasn't been a certification for that yet. So
yeah.
Hmm.
obviously it's still sucky. So
It's
Hmm.
sucky. It's sucky. Especially because I think a lot of consumers sort of go around thinking like, oh wow, I did a good thing. I bought this like ethical certified coffee. Whew, you know, move on to the next problem. And actually, the truth is that, some certifications are really good at one thing, but then not another. So, like organic coffee. It's great that they're not using poison because we are poisoning our planet. We're in a mass extinction, and the age of the Anthropocene is like characterized by the fact that we're just losing species at a rate that hasn't been seen since the dinosaurs passed away. All right, so clearly, and the insect apocalypse like is undergirding and underpinning this trophic cascade of disaster that is largely driven by agriculture, right? So like agriculture is a third of climate change, but it's also driving 80% of biodiversity loss. A part of that's deforestation, but a big part of that's chemical use too. So if you're organic, awesome that you're not poisoning the planet. But also, like, why are you not sorting out living income, child labor, slavery, torture, and deforestation? Those feel like things maybe you should look at, kind of. I don't know. It seems like a low bar. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, and I get. It seems like a low bar probably from Europe, but over here we're still working off of a minimum wage that was passed in 2009. And we have the largest employers in the country are teaching or are showing their employees how to use government systems for food assistance and things like that. Like we're a third world country in many ways here in the United States along those lines. So yeah, like it seems like it should be a low bar even for us, but like we're fighting for it here on the home front. So it doesn't seem that ridiculous that, this is a hard thing to get past out there in the world. People for whatever reason do not seem to value a living wage for their labor, even when we're currently experiencing it, and that's crazy, but it's true. And we tend to value a lot of things above that when that's the thing that impacts all of us, I think, the most.
All of us. Yeah, but it's crazy because you're talking about corporations in America. Correct me if I'm wrong. Starbucks has like the most violations of the NLRB of any company in recent history in the United States. I think they're the top labor violator.
Besides
correct?
Amazon, that wouldn't surprise me.
I think okay. I'll have to go check and we can Google. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're right up there, right?
Oh,
and guess
for sure.
what? So they seem to really be opposed to letting their baristas unionize and have a living income, which is crazy. But B, what is it that they sell? They sell coffee. And they, like most of the other major coffee companies, sell at a price point that is so low that there are literally almost no coffee farmers who earn more than $3 a day.
Wow.
And most coffee farmers are actually on a bad year because it fluctuates a bit, the harvest, the season, the year, the price on the market.
Any agricultural industry, yeah.
Any agricultural industry. But most farmers on a bad year will make less than $2.15 a day. That is the actual threshold set by the World Bank for extreme poverty. So, essentially, depending on the year, 1 in 7 to 1 in 20 humans that walk the earth that is in extreme poverty is connected to coffee. That's really messed up. And you're right that these huge corporations that are battling against worker rights in America, they are also retailing this product that I consider to be like just tied to the most appalling poverty. And by the way, when people are that poor, that's why there are millions of kids working in coffee. The reason we have child labor is because people feel they have no choice. Their kids are either going to starve and go to school or get out of school and work, and then the families can feed them. So that's like not a great choice. And, essentially people at, Nestle and Starbucks and Dunkin' and all these super like, Dutch Bros, these famous brands, their senior executives, like, they're very rich people. They're millionaires. They're literally millionaires.
Yeah, I mean, billionaires with a B in many cases.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that's the biggest thing is there has been an incredibly effective propaganda campaign from the global elite, for lack of a better term, that says that they've convinced the working class, all of us that if they pay this person a living wage, you have to pay more for the product that you consume. If we pay, if we follow these environmental precautions, you have to pay more. And because we already pay you so low, you can't afford to pay more. And that's the thing is, no matter how passionately we believe in most cases about, yeah, we would all love everybody to make a living wage, and we would all love the environment to be treated the way that it needs to be treated. Everything it comes down to, and I think the United States is a great example of this, because we talk about, American made all the time in our Make America Great Again bullshit. If you provide consumers with two options, and one's American made and it costs more, and one's imported from child labor overseas and it costs less, and you give them the blind opportunity to purchase that, they will always, 100% of the time, purchase the cheaper option. A company recently that makes shower head filters that I did a product plug for actually did that. They offered two. They sourced some made in the United States, and then they had their Chinese import ones, and put them both on their website, made it very clear one was one, the other was the other, and they sold zero of the American made ones. So people like to say that, oh yeah, I'll pay extra for the American made, and this goes across the board. And so the thing is that no matter, we can sell people on how bad something is for the environment or how poorly people are living because of this, but the only way to make it effective is to have it economically viable for the consumer. And that's really where it gets difficult, because the global elite have kept all of us poor enough where paying a little extra is not economically viable for millions of people, especially millions of Americans. And I know at least the EU treats it, by and large, their citizens a little better than we treat ours. But I really think that that's the point, and it goes back ultimately to what I think we say all the time is really there's only one issue in the world, and that's a class issue, and everything falls underneath that, including this, where people were paid more, they'd be willing to spend a little bit more on coffee, or if executives were taking a little bit more out of that multi-$100 million salary and bonuses that they get, and just spreading that out across the company to pay everybody a little bit more without raising prices, we could solve all of these issues all in one fell swoop.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that so little of the money goes to the farmers. Like, sometimes it's like 3%. So it's not that probably if we paid 2 cents extra per cup, we could have sustainable, ethical coffee. So that's already a little shocking, because 2 cents extra a cup's not that much. But it's really not about there being 2 cents more or less. It's about where is the money going that you're paying for? Because if you buy a coffee cup, it does not cost 2 cents. When was the last time you got a 2 cent cup of coffee? So there's a lot of money going to many pockets along the way, including these like insane corporate executives' bonuses and golden parachutes and, advertising budgets. So I think when you think about how much money goes to the retailers, like the supermarkets and the coffee companies, these are some of the richest companies in the world and some of the richest executives in the world. But what's happening is that, almost none of the money goes back to the farmers. And I should also say, it's not only that some farmers are poor or extremely poor. Like, I don't know if you know this, but if you have been drinking coffee, you've also been drinking actual slavery. Like, coffee is one of the top drivers of slavery in Brazil. And Brazil is the number one coffee producer in the world. It produces somewhere between 31 and 39% of global coffee. So you've been drinking Brazilian coffee, unless you specifically set your life goal to never drink Brazilian coffee. And like, it is literally one of the top drivers. So these are people who get like basically nothing, right? And that's crazy. Americans, I don't think, would want to drink slave coffee, right?
Yeah, and so we obviously advocate for socialism in America all the time on our podcast, and we generally focus on like public utilities, like major like food, water, electricity, Like, why are we offering profit to companies to just take away from people's needs that they have to exist? But one thing we don't generally focus on a lot is commodities like coffee as as something we would focus on initially, certainly as for our certain brand of socialism, if you would, or so you would say. But I think when you go down the line, it really is necessary to have privatize, to get rid of this private chain of exploitation for a commodity. And I think certainly for the big seven, the big four, or, there are certain industries where I could absolutely see doing a whole, full socialism from all the way down from the farmer to the grocery store for consumers in the United States for a commodity that has such exploitation, like coffee, like fishing, shrimp fishing, like commodities that have this issue with modern day slavery being one of the big factors of their existence.
I mean, I completely believe that the European model of socialism has delivered so much better for public health and education and everything that it's kind of nuts that people see it as a demonic force for eating babies in a basement. It blows my mind that people like you and I would say socialism.
The Red Scare propaganda in the United States is on a whole different level. Yeah.
It's very weird. It's very weird because, people who purport to hate socialism, but who say they love kids and they hate, human trafficking and stuff. Well, wake up and smell the coffee. There's effing trafficking in your coffee. Literally, we worked with the international rights advocates to file a lawsuit against Starbucks for having human trafficking in their coffee. It's common. Just like we filed a complaint with U.S. Customs to stop coffee coming in to the United States for Dunkin' and McDonald's and Starbucks and Nestle because there are we found that there are 3,700 workers in slave-like conditions in coffee plantations that directly supplied Starbucks and major American brands, and that's only with the Brazilian authorities investigating 0.1% of coffee farms. So clearly we need to have a living income and unions and direct trade and a transformation of how commodity agriculture is operating. And you're right, it shouldn't just be for coffee. It should be for cocoa. It should be for apparel. It should be for seafood. You talked about shrimp, all these very high risk commodities. But also where is the law enforcement? Where is the U.S. Customs? Where?
It leads back to, police only caring about the capital, and their goal of existence is not to help the society. It is to protect and ensure that corporate capital is protected, right?
Yeah. So let's send kids to Venezuela or something, or separate them from their moms and give them to foster care while their moms go to Venezuela, while we turn a blind eye to literally millions of kids in child labor and thousands of slaves. And we've just decided that's okay to have that in our supply chains. It blows my mind.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you're familiar with where the term banana republic came from, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not even that we're turning a blind eye. The United States has actively facilitated these things. We've destabilized these regions and installed, puppet governments to allow these things to happen. So United States corporations could reap the benefits of those, where it's out of sight, out of mind for, what we thought we wouldn't allow here in the United States anymore. Obviously, we're seeming to go backwards on that too.
We have child labor, of course, in America too. It's true, we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously now with how we're treating immigrants and what we're going to do now, immigrants are integral pillar in our agricultural system here in the United States, our economic system as a whole in the United States.
Yeah.
And taking those out, they're either going to have to, sell these immigrants they've detained back to these farms and stuff, what they're talking about doing, in the form of prison labor, basically. And then
Work will set you free in America once again.
Yep. They're also talking about lowering the age of child labor again,
Yes.
so they can send them back out into the fields to work. And that's like, again, that's where we're at here. So it's hard, and that's why it feels so insurmountable, because like we're fighting it here on the home front, where it's like we already fought a war over this shit. You know, we already have like we've had decades of fighting tooth and nail for every scrap of human rights and human decency that we can have. And now it's just all being set on fire and shipped out back to sea, it feels like.
It does feel like a dumpster fire if the dumpster was like floating down a river that was caused by a superstorm heading to a tsunami. And yet, at the same time, I think it's really important to have a note of hope as we like watch that dumpster fire float along, which is that, you know, look, first, blue states can make a grain wall, and also cities can make a huge difference. But also, you know, companies are weaker than governments, and it is absolutely possible
generally
to take down
speaking,
big corporations. They're very brand sensitive. They're extremely sensitive to reputational risks. They do not like customer outrage, because essentially it's not for them necessarily about, you know, going bankrupt. It's about whether they do worse than their competitor. You know,
Sure.
if I'm a company and Taylor does better than me in the next quarter, then like, oh, you know, somebody's going to sack me and replace me with another CEO, and I might not get a big enough golden parachute. So like, everybody work harder to do better than Taylor. You know, I think that American corporations, like Dunkin', like Dutch Bros, like Starbucks, like Nestle USA, you know, they really care what consumers say and think and do. And we have this immense, beautiful power as consumers, as activists, to step up and force industry change. And I think that, you know, it feels like we're in this very dark time right now in terms of government action. But if we tee up enough positive industry change, then when the government shifts and we have a better government, it will be more easy to get good laws passed.
Right. Assuming we do get the government shift at some point.
Assuming.
It's still looking like that's a possibility. It's not I don't know. It still seems like probably the most likely possibility. But
I have hope.
Yeah.
We had the biggest protest in American history, right? On No King's Day, 5 million souls got out in the streets, right? That's amazing. It was not front page news, which is like so wrong, but it's like huge. And then that was not even the only one, right? The one before was 3 million people in the streets, plus like in between, there are so many small ones. It's uncountable. There's like, Americans have never protested this much in the history of the United States. And we've melted the phones to Congress. Like, they literally have senior staffers answering the phone because there's so many people angry, calling. Republicans can't even have town halls anymore. I think, you know, we are so strong. We're so powerful when Americans stand up for their rights and for justice and for democracy. It's like it's a tsunami. It's a real tsunami.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things when you're talking about competition that has been difficult here in the United States as well, is because our antitrust laws haven't been enforced in so long that we have the illusion of competition in many, many cases, especially in the agricultural industry, where there's, you know, all of these brands, but they're all owned by a small handful of companies.
I was literally just going to say the same thing, like specifically about Nestle. Like Nestle owns all the brands. They own like a quarter of the food brands that are available. And I think it's like Starbucks is already a target for BDS. And so like it's difficult unless we provide really clear instructions, like boycott Starbucks and use this alternative. And I don't think that's really mainstream right now in what should be the alternative. And oftentimes difficult at the supermarket because 90% of the shelves, everything is owned by these 4 major conglomerates. And then maybe at the bottom in the corner, you know, there's literally a guy on TikTok who goes to supermarkets and it's like, these are the 4 things on this entire shelf that aren't owned. And we don't even know if they're doing anything more ethical other than just not being part of this conglomerate. So U.S. consumers do not have as many options unless you source it through, online, your own, which is certainly a thing we can do. But like, we need to know,
now all
American
that's
consumers need to
tariffs
know.
now.
Yeah, the tariffs are insane. Oh my God, the
possibly.
tariffs. Don't
Yeah.
even get me started. The tariffs are going to
Yeah,
like kill Chiapas and
yeah.
Chiapas in Mexico and Minas Gerais in Brazil. They're going to be so ruined. And Nicaragua, because it's a high dependency country. They're very dependent on exporting to the US, as is Mexico, and very high tariffs. But, I think just to like break it down. So what could you do? One thing is you can buy exactly the same coffee as before, but take a picture of yourself, go on social media and say, hey, mofos, like, I don't agree with what I just found out about your practices and I'm your customer and like, you better change or I will buy with someone else, and I think companies hate that. It freaks them out a lot. So this is like a way of drinking the same coffee, but voting through social media. And another idea is if you just like set aside 30 minutes of your life and you Google and you look for an ethical coffee company that matches with what you believe in, whether it's you care about shade grown regenerative agroforestry, or you care about women's empowerment, or an indigenous led co-op, in Mexico, or you want it to be organic and that's your thing is chemicals and you don't, or living wage, whatever it is, or a combination, hopefully, if you can.
Right.
So you just choose a really good company and you set up something where you buy like once a month, you get a bag, and that way at home, more or less, most of the time you'll have some ethical coffee at your disposal. Then it just limits how often you're dependent on the vicissitudes of whatever's around you. But I think that you shouldn't beat yourself up and be like, well, if I can't be perfect, I won't do anything. Because I've noticed when I go to restaurants and cafes and I just say like, oh, what's your, do you have any coffee that's living income? They'll look at me like I'm insane. And they'll like call over the manager and I'll be like, so do you have any coffee that's living income? The manager's like, what? I'm like, how about organic?
They're like, we're used to these kind of questions, but that one, that's a new one for us.
Well, I would have no idea. I have no idea if I have coffee that's living income. And I've got some really nice coffee upstairs that's supposed to be ethically sourced, but I've...
Well, so just the fact that you ask is usually an enormous, weird thing in their day.
Mm.
But if like 10 people ask in a month, you bet it goes right up to the C-suite.
Sure.
And I think that the combination of buying as much ethically as you can and then asking when you have to buy something that isn't like your top choice to just choose whatever the best is that you have available to you and then take a picture of yourself and send it to the company and be like, what are you doing for kids and slaves?
Sure.
That helps a lot. And also, petitions are super powerful. We have one petition that I know that's on Echo that got 107,000 signatures asking Starbucks to stop slavery in their supply chain. There's another signature with We Move Europe that got like 68,000 signatures. Petitions make a really big difference. So you can sign petitions for coffee. Like at Coffee Watch, we got every single petition that I could find that other people had created. I put it all in one place so people can just click all of it. And then, I also would say that if you can find the time just once in your life to write to your representative about this, that is huge. That's probably as valuable as buying ethical coffee for 2 years.
I mean, I'm going to tell you, my representative is not going to read that at all, but I have a horrible one, so that's more him than anything. I'm basically just asking him to stop taking away our Medicaid and supporting a pedophile, and that's too much to ask at this point. So,
well, some of our state representatives and certainly our senators would take notice, possibly.
Yeah.
Maybe. It depends where you live. I mean, if you have a total loser representing you, it's not worth it. But then write to your like local, news or something. And I think, sometimes it's also about saying, okay, well, I go to this university. There's a lot of coffee there. Or I work at this office. We drink a lot of coffee collectively. Can I change the institution's coffee? That's also
Sure.
really valuable. So I think the key is that there's so many ways to vote. And this is true not just for coffee, but for your chocolate, because cocoa also has got kids, slaves, extreme poverty, and deforestation. Obviously you cannot vote with your car unless you're like Jeff Bezos and you buy a different car every day of the year.
Right.
That's like probably not most of your listeners, nor our situation for the three of us. But you can vote every day with your coffee choice and your chocolate choice. And we can vote with a lot of the things in our daily life, right? It's
Right,
empowering.
especially with commodities that are on the cheaper end of the scale. It's a lot easier to do to spend maybe a little bit extra on coffee, 25-50% more on something you're not spending, tens of thousands of dollars on a year, unless you're going to Starbucks every day or a coffee shop to buy coffee. But so I guess tell us a little bit more about what people are experiencing with modern day slavery, because I'm not sure when people say modern day slavery that it really fully kicks in. For they think of, especially for Americans, they just go back to American slavery, and they're like, I don't see any plantation owners across the world, and I don't see those people being stuck on one place where if they run away they're criminals and whatnot. Explain what people are going through, and the nearly 50 million people across the globe are experiencing when they experience this.
Okay, so Taylor, you're going to be a Brazilian in this hypothetical, and I run a big coffee plantation. I actually happen to run the biggest coffee plantation in Brazil, which makes more coffee than all of Bolivia combined. It's a very
Hmm.
big plantation.
Okay.
So I want workers because obviously I need many workers to harvest. So I would send a gato. Gato is Portuguese for cat. It was kind of like a coyote, like, the people who bring you across the desert to come to America, coyotes. But these are gatos. I'd send a gato to your neighborhood. And you, Taylor, are like a typical target for me, right? That means you're Afro descendant and you probably live in something called a quilombo, which is a place where formerly enslaved Brazilians would escape and
Hmm.
set up like sort of little free states. It's incredibly heroic and wildly difficult. I just like have no words that admire those people so much. But rather than like diving into Brazilian history, you're one of their descendants. So you're living in this quilombo, you're an Afro descendant Brazilian, and you are quite impoverished. So, you live in a like tough life, okay life, but tough life, but you probably don't know how to read and write very well. I would send a gato, and the gato will trick you and tell you, like, oh, I have a great job. This is going to be so nice. All expenses paid, food, housing, everything. Here's how much you're going to earn. Sign here. You sign. Get you on a bus, bunch of other guys, bring you to my plantation. First thing the gato says is, oh, you owe me all this money now. Like hundreds of dollars. So you just right away are in debt bondage. But the debt will accrue interest. So you're going to have to start paying at a very rapid clip that you basically cannot afford because, oh, surprise, surprise, there's like no food, there's no water, there's no toilet, there's rats and bats. You're living in essentially like a chicken shed. And if you want to get anything, you have to go to the store that's like basically my store. It might be my cousin or something, or, you know. And so you end up at the end of the season having earned nothing or being more in debt than you were when you started. And along the way, I've had you in these insalubrious, squalid, disgusting conditions. Plus, I've made you work basically 12 hours a day, every day, with no breaks for weekends, no sick leave, no nothing leave, doing back-breaking work in very hot weather. That's modern slavery.
Sure. So really
Um,
not all that different from slavery that we envision existing in our history, but with a slight modern day economic contractual sort of
it's
flair to it.
That's right.
it's really similar. I mean, it's almost identical to turn of the century America. In the United States, we had sawmills and coal mines were notorious for this. You had to live in a company town. They charged you for that. They paid you in script, which wasn't actual money, and it was only good at the company store. And and it was essentially, I mean, that's where our labor movement really came from, was people in those conditions. And yeah, it is essentially slavery without, you know, the physical chains to keep you there.
But
Right.
actually,
Slavery
let
with a
me
few extra
add,
steps.
yeah, so, it's not like people have metal shackles on them,
Mhm.
but, let's just, for people who are not that familiar with Brazil, it is wildly difficult and dangerous for workers to speak out and defend themselves. Like, Brazil is literally one of the most dangerous and restrictive countries in the world for environmental and human rights defenders.
Hmm.
And even for government people who investigate labor abuse like slavery, like, four inspectors were murdered in this place in Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais was where most Brazilian coffee comes from, when they were inspecting rural labor conditions. And to the best of my knowledge, this local group reported that conflicts between union leaders and human rights defenders against slave labor in Minas Gerais, which is like the headquarters of where all but half of Brazil's coffee comes from, it's led to 420 murders between 2014 and 2023. So, people get attacked, beaten, murdered, threatened. Like, they're not in chains. But that's not like how you should define slavery.
No, no,
Right.
absolutely not. I just think,
Yeah.
especially in the United States, like, that's because that was our version of
That
slavery
was
for
us.
so
That was
long.
us. Oh yeah. Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
And
obviously
lynchings.
Denmark, yeah, huge,
And
yeah.
lynchings, like
Hmm.
lynchings, because in America, if you were brave enough to step out of line and say like no and be basically a labor activist back in the day for African American farm workers, like of course you would get lynched.
Hmm.
They'd make up some excuse about what you did. So I
Right.
think
Or
it's
you just
weirdly
create your own.
similar to America.
You just create your own city, like you were saying, and then it gets bombed by, the authorities of white cities, and said that
Yeah.
you're doing something illegal in Tulsa, and we're just going to bomb your
Yeah.
entire economic system. Yeah.
Tulsa,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, but I mean, I think that most Americans are actually like lovely, good people who do not want slavery in their coffee. And if I could talk to all Americans today and just like get directly into their head and say, would you like to have some rape coffee or child labor coffee or slave coffee? Like, how does that sound? They'd be like, no, no, that sounds terrible, Dad. I don't want that. So I think, the real challenge is how do we wake people up to this reality of what's in their coffee? And also, via learning about that, which is the sort of more obvious, accessible daily thing, learning about their chocolate, their seafood, their sneakers. How can we get Americans to rise up in their beautiful, awesome beauty and to fight back against some of these atrocities that often are being perpetrated by major American corporations that, like you said, actually are totally connected to problems in America, where they're like racking up NLRB violations, giving money left, right, and center to politicians, which I consider to be not, campaign finance, but corruption, just like legalized
And
corruption.
Yep.
we have
Oh
a
yeah.
lot
How
of
do we fight
legalized
that?
corruption here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember, corporations are people, money is speech. So
Oh my God,
that's
Citizens
where we're at.
United.
Yeah.
Is it worse than Korematsu, or is it like worse than Plessy v. Ferguson, or is it it's a toss-up? American Supreme
It's
Court got
almost
so
worse
many
because
good
it's at the
choices.
top of it's at the crux of the
Yeah.
political structure. So
Yeah,
difficult to
and
say.
and it's been ruled as a constitutional law, so therefore it's not something that's easily changed. You need two-thirds of
Yeah.
Congress, and these are all the people who would lose the most by changing it. So I would
The
say,
concierge class sucking on the teats of corporate corruption.
Yeah, you got it. You got
so
it.
I guess I kind of want to pivot a little bit more specifically to your organization, Coffee Watch. What is it that your organization is doing on this front? Like, how big is your organization? What are the steps that it's taking? Like, what is it that Coffee Watch does specifically?
Yeah. So we started 8.5 months ago. We've been able to publish almost one report per month. Most of them are based on undercover investigations that we did with ally NGOs. And I really believe in actually elevating their work and having them be the stars and we be the supporting cast of characters. So we worked with a wonderful group called China Labor Watch. We documented really serious rights abuses in Yunnan, China, in the supply chains of Nestle and Starbucks. By the way, in China, like it's illegal to be in a union. People are working dawn till dusk. They get no medical leave. They are with hazardous, poisonous chemicals. Like there's so many problems. Like child labor. We won't even go into all of it. But so that was our first report. And then our second report was with these two amazing Mexican organizations, Empower and Prodesc, looking at exploitation and opacity in the supply chains of Starbucks, Nestle, and other major corporations who are really abusing workers in Mexico in very serious ways, actually. Then we did something on Brazilian slavery and human trafficking. And then another report on unmasking the disgusting lobbying that the coffee industry had been doing in Europe to try to kill this beautiful European law called the European Deforestation Regulation. And then we did a report on really very serious labor abuses with Roberto Brasil and a great Colombian NGO, Voces por el Trabajo, on abuses in Colombian coffee, labor abuses in Colombian coffee. And right now we're working on new reports on deforestation in Brazilian coffee and deforestation Colombian and Indonesian coffee. And we just published a paper on how Trump's tariff wars are going to impact coffee and how badly we need a coffee exemption for the tariff wars, please. It's so crazy. You can't even grow coffee in America. It's like nuts. It makes no sense. But yeah, no, it will really like bankrupt and impoverish millions of already extremely poor farmers. So we do these reports, but we've also started litigation, strategic litigation against coffee companies. So we filed a complaint with Customs and Border Patrol, naming Starbucks, Nestle, Dunkin', McDonald's, and a few others, and asking CBP to halt their imports of Brazilian coffee tainted by slavery and forced labor. We did these two big petitions. Yeah, we're trying to do everything I can think of. We worked with a lot of media, The Guardian, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, German media, French media, Spanish media. I really want to raise awareness with consumers and expose these abuses. It is nuts. These things are crimes. They're not okay. And I want to try to like get companies to stop. Any means that I can, whatever we can do. I mean, I don't believe in violence. So like at Greenpeace, and Amnesty, it's all about nonviolent protest. But yeah, we're just trying to fight the power.
That's a lot to do in 8.5 months. Like you seriously hit the ground running, which is incredible. I'm curious, because you're talking about certifications earlier and how there's no living wage certification. Is that something that your organization is going to work on? Maybe having a living wage certification that coffee producers can get that would be somehow enforceable?
So we are 100% going to work on trying to change certifications. Half of global coffee is certified. Isn't that crazy? How can it be that half of global coffee is certified and yet we still have slaves and kids and deforestation and extreme poverty? I'm sorry, but like, I don't agree. I think, I have a question for the teacher. Is that consumer fraud? Like, hello? I'm raising my hand here. No, I think like we have got to work on changing certifications to make all the existing certifications better. They have to do better.
Could Coffee Watch create their own certification? I mean,
No,
like I don't know how the certification system works at all. So it's a probably a very stupid question, but
no, it's not a stupid question. I just think that many people used to think that certifications would change the world, and it was a totally valid thing to hope for and try, like back in the day, but it just hasn't seemed to work really in the real world that much. And so, I mean, one option is to try to improve certifications. Like that's definitely something that's worth trying to do. But I think the other thing to fight for is laws and law enforcement. Because, let's say like Taylor is a certification and he manages to grow and grow and grow and grow, and it's amazing, and he covers 10% of global coffee. That's 10%. That's like not okay. That would be still an F- if we were in school, right? For the global coffee industry. It wouldn't even be a D-.
No.
And so basically what we need is laws We need to pass laws that the countries that consume coffee, like the US and Europe, will not accept coffee if it has slavery and deforestation. Those are very low bars. And that is like not negotiable, I think. So that is like what I want to dedicate my life to, is getting laws passed.
So I guess that leads me,
like law enforcement,
that leads me to kind of my next question is if you had the ability to tell just governments, like the top 25 governments that consume these goods or just whatever, you have the entire ability to make any rule change, any group, any agency, do whatever you say. What would be like the three biggest, like just right away, like what would be the top of your mind? This is what needs to happen immediately.
I would tell the Europeans, please don't be pussies and go ahead and pass the European deforestation regulation, which you've been saying you're going to do for a while and you keep delaying. So don't be pussies, just do it. I would also tell the British, like, get off your butts, because you promised. You have this UK deforestation regulation. It's actually called the Environment Bill, Schedule 17, Royal Senate, House of Commons, House of Lords, everything. And we've been waiting for fucking years to get the implementing regulation from DEFRA. God damn it, where is that law? Like, give us the implementing regulations now. Yesterday, stat, toot toot. And then for the US, we have this bill called the Forest Act, which actually has like bipartisan support both in the House and the Senate. And my message is effing pass that law. Like, pass it. It's like got trillions of dollars of assets under management that support it. It's bipartisan support. We need that law. You know what? It's not even that we need that law to be nice to forests or like nice to the farmers. We actually need that law if you like breathing, because forests are essentially the lungs of our planet. So if you're fond of inhaling and exhaling in the long run, then pass those laws. Just do it. Like Nike would say, only Nike sucks for workers. So don't be like Nike.
For sure. So then these laws would allow enforcement to, do more things than what they're doing now, essentially, is the goal.
That's exactly right. Those laws, those bills would all mean that you could stop deforestation and illegal deforestation in the high-risk commodities. And in the case of the EUDR, the European Deforestation Regulation, it's actually not just deforestation, it's also crimes, which means you couldn't have slavery and you can't have kids or like other weird, horrible things that are common in coffee, like rape and forced labor and union busting and killing people who try to unionize.
Like, since we have our legalized corruption here in the United States, which is obviously exploited by corporations to continue this stuff in the form of lobbying specifically, is there plans to attempt to create a lobby, I guess specifically for the United States? I don't know how much lobbying is really affected in the EU. To lobby for these things. I mean, anybody can lobby, obviously. It's just how much money do you have to do so. But is that something that Coffee Watch is trying to do, is effectively lobby government?
So basically in the EU, we managed to unmask in a very detailed report this really disgusting, pernicious lobbying that some of the dregs of the coffee industry had been unleashing on the EU to say that the European deforestation regulation was crazy or overbroad, it had to be delayed and watered down, essentially trying to kill the EUDR. And I should say, the dregs of the coffee industry did this like in cahoots with the worst actors in pulp and paper, some of whom are in America, and the worst actors in the soy sector, some of whom are also in America. So it was like, some pretty bad lobbying, some of it coming from the US to try to weaken Europe's resolve to make the world a better place. But when we unmasked that lobbying, actually it's a lot of companies kind of folded like sheets. They just didn't like being caught red-handed in public, because coffee is a very brand-sensitive, consumer-facing commodity. So I think it was nerve-wracking for them to have people like know that what they were doing was so wrong. And so although there's like one company, Lavazza, which has gone on this nattering nabob of negativity, such losers, I just like have no words for how bad their stupid crap is that they spew against the EUDR. But most of the coffee companies have kind of gotten with the program and are spending their time and money on compliance instead of complaining. Comply over complaining. It is better for the world and better for you. But so we did focus a lot on that. And I think right now, that's kind of all we had the bandwidth to do. But I do hope that, especially if there is a new administration that's less hell-bent on destroying the planet, we would be able to mobilize a big coalition of people power and small ethical coffee companies to fight for the Forest Act, which right now has all the high-risk commodities except for coffee, but it'd be easy to get coffee in it, I think, if it had a real shot at passing. So yeah, I dream of that in a happy moment when I think about democracy triumphing and justice and truth winning and Frodo throwing the ring in the crack of Mount Doom. Like, Frodo, please, you can get there. Sam,
right. Sometimes it does feel that way. Yeah.
When Frodo gets that ring, then I'll be able to, hopefully, there won't be any more orcs and we can like do good things with all the dwarves. So yeah, that's that. I think it's a reasonable outcome to imagine that the Forest Act would pass in a different administration. So now I just feel like maybe my job is to try to get the coffee industry ready to support that bill at some point.
For sure. And I think we can, especially with our platform and Progressive Americans, can broaden our approach right now, which is very focused on a few particular U.S.-centric issues. I think we have understandably sort of forgotten about some of the wider issues, some of us that affect us not immediately, but affect the greater world in which we do have a decent amount of ability to sway those actions. So, I think we'll do a better job here for promoting some things and trying to look for. I'm going to do some research and find some coffee alternatives that we can order and things that we can promote here and pass along to some of our friends.
Amazing.
Does your website have lists of coffee companies that you deem more ethical to consume from, by chance?
We have a whole little guide to buying more ethical coffee. It varies so much from country to country that we're still working on this fuller list of like where you are and then which companies can you buy there. But I would say in America, if you get bird-friendly Smithsonian certified coffee, that's pretty safe.
Okay.
And Equal Exchange is a very ethically oriented coffee company. If you're in the UK, Cafe Direct is probably one of the most ethical, but also this thing called Kiss the Hippo. And then there's also this coffee called orangutan coffee that like literally, as its name indicates, kind of saves orangutans with every cup. And there's gorilla coffee, which kind of literally, as its name indicates, saves gorillas with every cup from Central Africa. So yeah, there's a lot of options. And I just think it really depends on where you live because, the bigger, less ethical coffee companies tend to be enormous and global. But the more ethical companies tend to be more regional. So one of the nice things is actually if you're like a progressive person and you care about doing good in the planet, if you find a cool ethical coffee company close to you, that's probably like your peeps. And maybe you want to go visit their roastery someday with your family and friends on like your coffee loving aficionado fellow caffeine addicts go on a trip or whatever. Just like, engaged in like cool experiences in the best coffee shop in your neighborhood that's the most ethical because they will be like-minded individuals. And there's so much we can do more when we're together. I always feel really demoralized when I'm alone. But something that's been amazing about Coffee Watch is all these like great friends and allies from every place I worked in the past, my friends at Greenpeace and Amnesty and Human Rights Watch and Mighty Earth. My God, I'm just like the recipient of so much love and kindness and, so much encouragement. And I think when you're together, isn't it so much better? You feel better about making a difference, right?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Just one question from the comments was somebody asked, "What about matcha?" And I don't know if that fits at all. I have no idea how matcha is made or what it comes from. I know almost nothing about it.
Oh,
So.
matcha's totally different from coffee. It's like not
Yeah.
coffee at all. But
Yeah.
although you can find ethical matcha companies, you also have to be a little bit careful. If you drink tea, for example, there's some super ethical tea companies, but there's also some bad ones. If you want to see the worst that tea has to offer, there's a BBC documentary that's like Rape in Your Tea, where they literally documented sexual violence and exploitation and abuse of women in tea. It's just actually a lot of sexual violence in the agricultural industry. I mean, unsurprisingly, if you have slaves and child labor, why should we be surprised that you don't have it?
Yeah.
But there's also super ethical tea companies that are like women owned and empowering. So I think whatever you drink, you can find something that literally makes the world a better place with every cup. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do that 100% of the time. Like, I also don't always drink the best coffee. I had to go visit family, and I took my baby. We went to the airport, and I was like, I'm gonna die if I don't have a coffee. I just like cannot make it out to this with a baby without a coffee. And I went, and I wasn't even organic.
Oh no, you're gonna get canceled now.
Yeah, now I'm gonna get canceled. No, don't beat yourself up and don't cancel yourself for, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try, I think, most of the time. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really incredible. Did you have anything else, Taylor, here?
No, I mean, I think we're pretty much out of time, so I think this is a good spot to leave it, and just know that you try your best, and nobody's perfect. We're humans, and we're inherently imperfect. So all you can do is try a little bit, and if you find something that works for you, tell your neighbors, tell your friends and family all about it.
And don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I want to add one more thing, which is just like big love and hugs. And I wish I was there and I could give you guys a huge hug in person, because I think what you do is so cool. And I feel like a lot of your listeners get really inspired and jazzed up. And I certainly do when I listen to your stuff. And I think, that love is the answer. And if we shower love and positivity and courage around us, it will come back, and we'll benefit from it like tenfold. I really believe in that. I'm a coffee cup half full person. So let's end on a note of like love and courage.
Yeah. We agree with that wholeheartedly, and it's definitely it may not feel like it's the most powerful thing in the short term, but in the long term it's the only thing that wins, right?
And I want people to be able to shower you and your organization and your efforts with more love. So can you please let everybody know how they can support you? I want to know how they can support your organization, how they can follow what Coffee Watch is doing. Just shameless self-promotion, everything you want people to know.
You're adorable.
Let it fly.
You're just the cutest Rex. Okay, well, go to coffeewatch.org, and at the bottom of our page, please follow us on social, because we went from 0 to about 1 million views in 8 months. And I think that's part of what scares the coffee industry.
Do that right now. Actually.
Yeah, please, just follow us on social. And then if somebody feels extraordinarily motivated, they can also volunteer. Our door is open to volunteers. And we do rely a lot on people volunteering to do cool things to save the world and make it a better place with every cup.
Well, and if you want, I can send you guys the fully edited podcast episode here. You can clip it, whatever you guys need to do, full rights. And I was just checking out your YouTube, and add some more YouTube shorts, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so cool. Thank you.
For sure.
Y'all are adorable.
It's our pleasure. I mean, thank you for coming on, and you're a great wealth of knowledge, and your history in human rights activism and environmentalism is really inspiring. I think it'll be inspiring to a lot of our viewers, and we just appreciate your knowledge.
Just so bubbly and so happy for such a such a despairing topic and such a despairing time. And it's like, I feel like I'm watching a PBS show about how the end of the world is coming, and I just don't feel so bad about it. And you do such a great job at putting a happy light on such heavy topic.
That's hilarious. I was on this John Oliver thing about chocolate, and he's like, "Oh, this woman's voice should be for insomniacs," because I was like, "Totally I
You
was
have the
like,
coffee of
calm
voices,
down.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tel, for joining
No,
us.
thank
It's been a
you.
great
Thank you.
pleasure. And for all of our
Totally.
viewers, if you would like to support our channel, please subscribe. And if you'd like to become a member on YouTube, is where we have the most members and the most community engagement. So please feel free to join there. But if you're on Patreon and you'd like to support us through Patreon, please do that as well. Jordan has merch on offthewagon.com, right? That's what it is.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you can buy his merch. You can buy the podcast merch. But if all you can do is listen and share, that's all you need to do, and really appreciate that as well.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
That's right.
Thanks
Thanks
so
for
much for
tuning
being
in.
here, Tal.
Bye.